fighters. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
So if you didn't know, essentially today we're just going to be intermixing. We have some lovely speakers, and then we're going to be intermixing with chanting. I also have some louder. Can't hear you. Yeah, sorry, thank you. So the next person I want to introduce is Greta. She's a member of the Voten as the United Organizers of Baltimore. Here's C. We'll speak a little bit about that.
Together today is a very critical moment in our country's history, a moment that challenges the very principles upon which our criminal justice system is founded. Principles of fairness, of constitutional safeguards, and of the rule of law. Kilmar Garcia's illegal deportation to El Salvador is a prime example of the rogue, fascist, and unconstitutional being used by this current administration. Likewise, we see it occurring in LA with the Posse Comitatus Act. That was made specifically so that the military would not intervene, that it would be civilian law enforcement. But that too, thanks to the current administration, has been completely thrown out the window. Now, this hearing is as much about affirming that in the United States, no one, whether you're immigrant or not, is above or below the law and its protection. It is about remedying the system that is being destroyed from inside out, and the complicity of our elected officials who are aiding and abetting in criminal activity. Yeah. Woo. And nearly 2 weeks ago, honored those who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country and our values. And we can only wonder what they were when they see the authoritarian, fascist tactics being employed by the White House. Again, this is the United States of America, a country that was built on the principles of justice, on the principles of freedom, and of the welcoming of the tired, the poor, and the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And those who sacrificed their lives, who left their blood on the beaches of Normandy, on the frozen fields of Bastogne, and during the Battle of the Bulge, and every war since then, they deserve better. All those who have sacrificed themselves in defense of our Constitution and of our values deserve better, and by gosh, Kilmar Garcia certainly deserves better.
Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump, let's be clear, immigrants are welcome here. Donald Trump,
condemnation. Up, up with liberation. Down, down with deportation.
Up, up.
Hi, James. It's now about 9:30, which means in 1/2 an hour, the arraignment of Mr. Abrego Garcia will begin. If you are interested in entering the courthouse to witness this process as a dutiful citizen, we are going to have a group going into the courthouse right now. One of our comrades here will lead you in. If you're interested, go by the steps right there, and you can go into the courthouse.
I hope it doesn't lead us.
You cannot bring SOP into the courthouse. You will also not be able to bring in any kind of electronic device like smartphones or smart watches. So leave that with a trusted person on the outside.
And we are asking people to please be peaceful and respectful in there. We play by the judges' rules in there, and they will not be afraid to slam down on you. We don't want to look bad at.
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like.
For justice, for peace! For justice, for peace! For
Justice for peace.
For justice,
For peace.
for justice!
For peace.
For justice!
For peace.
For justice!
For peace.
For justice!
For peace.
For justice! For peace! For justice! For peace! For justice! For peace! For justice! For peace! For justice! For peace!
For justice. For peace.
For peace!
Louder.
For justice! For peace!
Louder.
For peace! For justice!
For peace.
For justice!
For peace.
For justice!
For peace.
For justice!
For peace. For peace. For peace.
For justice!
For peace.
For justice!
For peace.
For justice!
I'm so sorry. Imperial. Come on. For justice. For peace. For peace. For justice. For justice. For justice. For Kilmar. For everyone. We are here. For justice.
See what's like!
This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. They are scared. Let them hear you. Democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. I can hear you. This is what democracy looks like. You're angry. This country needs more angry women. Come on.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Cecily from the Tennessee Democracy Coalition.
All you protectors of democracy today! Are they ready to tell this administration that they need to honor their constitutional rights? The due process and the rule of law. My name is Cecily. I'm with the Tennessee Coalition for Democracy. I've got some. I think today it's important, given what we're dealing with today, that we give an account of what's being done in our name at SECOT in El Salvador. I hesitated to speak up because I'm not an immigrant, I'm a citizen. But when your government decides that it's policy to deploy masked men with no badges, to kidnap your neighbors with no due process, and rendition them to concentration camps, it's time to speak up and say no! The subject matter that I'm I'm going to talk about today is hard, and it's difficult, and it's painful. It's painful that these things are being done in our name, and it's painful that our tax dollars are going to pay for these things. The U.S. Holocaust Museum defines what distinguishes a concentration camp from a prison in a modern sense is that it functions outside of a judicial system. The prisoners are not indicted or convicted of any crime by judicial process. This is what we as taxpayers are funding under the Trump regime in El Salvador.
Your taxpayer money! You're paying that shit!
There have been countless reports all over our country of masked men kidnapping our neighbors in our streets without due process.
Send them to oil companies!
Authoritarian expert Timothy Snyder asserts if you accept that non-citizens have no right to due process, you are accepting that citizens have no right to due process. All the government has to do is claim that you're not a citizen. Without due process, you have no chance to prove the contrary.
That's right.
In LA this week, clergy came together to disrupt the lies about what's happening there. And it was stated, that's right, we can be peaceful witnesses. We can resist unjust authority without raising a hand against our neighbor. And we are here to do just that. We are here to disrupt their false narrative of violence. We are here to reject their lies. There is no one here advocating for criminals or terrorists. We are here to stand for justice and the rule of law. We are here to stand for the Constitution. We are here to demand that our elected officials, our military and law enforcement, honor their oaths to the Constitution.
That's right.
Not a dictator or wannabe dictator.
Right. That's right.
We are here out of a moral obligation to bear witness to what has been done in our name, a witness to what this government has done to Abrego, Garcia, and countless others. The Nazis were treated better. They were given due process. This is not right.
No, it's not. Fuck double jeopardy!
So, let's talk about SECOT, the prison in El Salvador, where the Trump administration is sending men that they believe are in gangs with no due process. I'd like to start by saying we found out that of the 238 men that Trump has sent to SECOT, 179 of the men have no criminal record here or abroad. Please, let that register before we continue. No criminal record whatsoever. 75% have clearer backgrounds than a lot of the people you know. That's right. Again, nobody is arguing about whether or not actual gang members should be in prison for crimes, for legitimate crimes. I do believe this is a human rights violation as a whole because it is. I'm more concerned about innocent immigrants and American citizens being caught up in this nightmare. I'm going to try to break it down in an easy to understand section, so please forgive me if I'm repetitive. We're going to talk about the daily regimen, and I apologize, it's very windy up here. I'm going to do the best I can.
You're doing great.
At SECOT, lockdown, prisoners are confined shoulder to shoulder in their cells 23 and a half hours a day. No outdoor time whatsoever. Fluorescent lights remain on 24 hours a day. They have no sense of time and no sleep cycle. They receive 30 minutes a day of tightly controlled corridor exercise. No jobs, no classes, no books, no programs of any kind, nothing. CCTV watches prisoners 24 hours a day like silent gods. Again, of the 238 men that Trump has sent to SECOT, 179 of the men have no criminal record here or abroad. Communication in isolation. No visits from families or lawyers. No letters or phone calls. All cell signal is blocked for a 1.5-mile radius. Mass virtual trials are held via video link up to 900 prisoners at a time. Most inmates have never been formally charged or sentenced. There is video evidence of piles of bodies and blood at SECOT. Discipline and psychological control. Prisoners arrive barefoot and shackled with their hands bound. They are forced to kneel in tight rows with their heads shaved upon arrival. If they are to be punished, they are put into an even smaller cell that is completely dark. Swift violence for perceived disobedience for breaking any rule. No sunlight ever. No clocks, no time markers. Inmates experience profound psychological deterioration. Juveniles around the age of 16 are in cells with hardened gang members. Inmates are required to be alert and obedient at all times during the day. Most sit idly. They are often required to remain silent. The rest of the time they remain mostly silent out of fear. Some inmates have reportedly lost their voice from prolonged silence and stress. Journalists have been allowed and reported an atmosphere of unnatural tense silence. The guards are armed and wearing balaclavas to increase fear. Again, of the 238 men that Trump has sent to SECOT, 179 of the men have no criminal record here or abroad. Living conditions. Each cell is designed for 80 people, but often it far surpasses 100. Guards often choose to humiliate. At the former SECOT facility, guards would strip inmates naked and put their faces into ice water until they nearly drowned while calling them dogs and scum. Solitary confinement is used as punishment. In the 350-plus deaths since 2022 at SECOT, there were signs of asphyxiation, fractures, and blunt trauma seen in photos. Bodies are buried in mass graves with no family notification. Rival gangs are mixed together as punishment. Government claims gang hierarchy is broken. Reports suggest otherwise. One of the few people ever released from SECOT said they had often had to sleep and live next to the corpses of their cellmates until the guards got around to removing them. Another man said they had to kneel for hours, and if someone collapsed from exhaustion, they would drag them out like an animal. He said many of the men were not even gang members. Legal. They were held without trial. Virtually no releases. Officials state openly they will never leave. Many are serving decade-long sentences without a trial. The United States has sent 238 perceived Venezuelan gang members, 179 with no criminal records in the U.S. or abroad, under a $6 million a year deal. Shame! We are paying $6 million a year for this.
Shame! Shame!
Human rights refer to it as a transnational penal colony, and a U.S. judge has referred to it as wholly lawless. Human rights President Bukele has acknowledged that thousands of men in El Salvador prisons were actually innocent. Many of those men were released from those prisons, but prisoners in SECOT go through a one-way door.
Dictator!
Testimonies from the inside. CNN and CBS report that inmates sleep on concrete and bare steel. Gang members claim it breaks them emotionally. Inmates describe it as a place of torture and death. Witnesses report having to sleep next to dead cellmates. Guards claim brutality is necessary. Police whistleblowers have admitted innocent men have been detained and abused. One guard stated they have nothing, so they have nothing to lose. Again, of the 238 men Trump has sent to SECOT, 179 of the men have no criminal record here or abroad. Condemnation from Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Human Special Rapporteur on Torture, Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. SECOT violates Nelson Mandela rules, the UN standard of prisoner treatment. Christosol reported 3,300 violations in the very first year alone. Human rights organizations refer to it as a black hole for human rights. things I'd like to add. Our country has sent innocent men here. We already know that. Some for tattoos they misunderstood. Some for administrative errors. Human rights and global response. Condemnation from members. These men go into SECOT knowing they will never see or hear from their families again. Imagine being innocent.
It's evil!
Is this what you really wanted, MAGA? Do you think Jesus thinks this treatment of his children is okay? Or do you understand human rights exist for a reason?
Jesus would be on our side!
What does your gut tell you? If you know this is wrong, please help us. Please get involved. He didn't tell you he was going to do this. You didn't vote for this cruelty. The best time to do the right thing was the election. But the second best time is right now. Use your voice.
We say no to silence!
I want to name off some of the prisoners that are still at SECOT, that are there without cause. Jose Franco Carabello Tiapa, a barber who entered the U.S. seeking asylum. Carabello was detained after an immigration officer noticed a tattoo of a clock on his arm, symbolizing the time of his daughter's birth, a common design in Venezuela. Despite lacking a criminal record and having pending asylum case, he was deported to SECOT under allegations of gang affiliation. Circe Reyes Barrio, a 35-year-old former professional soccer player from Venezuela. Barrios fled persecution and sought asylum in the U.S. He was detained and deported due to tattoos, including one resembling the Real Madrid logo, which authorities misinterpreted as gang-related. Despite providing evidence of his innocence and lack of criminal history, he was sent to SECOT. EM, identified only by initials for safety. EM fled Venezuela with his girlfriend to Colombia before being granted refugee status in the United States. Upon his arrival in Houston, he was detained and deported based on tattoos of a crown, soccer ball, and palm tree, common symbols in Venezuelan culture. His family was not informed of his deportation and later discovered his fate through media reports. Francisco Javier Garcia Cacique, a 24-year-old Venezuelan hairdresser. Garcia was deported and featured in a Salvadoran government video showcasing shackled prisoners. His family and advocates assert he was no gang affiliations and was wrongfully detained based on superficial indicators like tattoos. Marvin Jose Guimarte Fernandez, a Venezuelan national, was deported despite having no criminal record. He was apprehended during a routine immigration check-in with authorities citing alleged gang affiliations based on superficial indicators. He is currently detained in SECOT with ongoing legal efforts seeking his return. Maycare Espinosa was detained by the U.S. authorities and held at Guantanamo Bay before his deportation. Despite legal challenges and a court order prohibiting such deportations, he was sent to SECOT on March 17, 2025. He is currently incarcerated in SECOT with limited information available about his well-being. These are just a few of the souls whose cruel and abusive administration is upended without due process and with complete disregard to constitutional norms and rights.
Oligarchs!
We must bear witness to this grotesque injustice and demand that this ministry honor their oaths to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. At this time, I would like to hold a moment of silence for the innocent victims of the state-sponsored terrorism. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being protectors of democracy. Please be speaking up. We all need to hear your voices. Your elected officials need to hear your voices. Your fellow neighbors need to hear your voices because your voice unlocks theirs. And we all need to stand together in community against this horrible authoritarian regime. Thank you.
Justice! peace. For justice, for 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 peace.
For Kilmar!
For Kilmar!
I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Lindsay from the PSL. I don't know where she is. She's up there.
Sorry guys, for pulling my speech up real fast. Give me a second.
Alright. Hi, my name is Lindy, and I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. What do they do when the system makes a mistake? A big, undeniable, unconstitutional mistake. They scream to cover it up. Abrego Garcia spent months behind bars in a foreign country, not for breaking a law, not for crossing a border, but because ICE violated a court order. Because the Trump administration decided that their political agenda mattered more than the Constitution. This man had no charges against him when they deported him. None. But instead of admitting they were